Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have so much fun today. We're going to talk about a little bit different things than we normally talk about, because we're going to be talking with someone who works and is senior management at a large architectural firm. So we're going to be talking a lot about big business. Frequently we talk with people who they might be a one-person shop, or they might just have a small team, but everything that works for big business works for small business too. And so that's going to be what we're talking about today. So please join me in welcoming Jim Tyler to our program today. Welcome, Jim. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Jim Tyler is the Vice President of EAPC Architects Engineers and is in charge of business development. He has been with EAPC since 1997 and shares time in the Bismarck, St. Paul, and Phoenix offices of EAPC. He has degrees in mechanical engineering, a bachelor's degree from the University of Notre Dame, and a master's degree in administration from Central Michigan. Jim and his wife, Karen, have 2 children and reside in Bismarck, North Dakota. So again, Jim, welcome.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me.
Well, we are going to have such a great discussion today. So one of the things I always like to ask my guests is, tell us how they got to where they are today. And I'm going to love hearing your story, because so many times people are at a job for a couple of years and a job for a couple of years. And not that we're job hopping, we're just experiencing lots of things, right? You found a home back in 1997 with a company and have just been there forever. And so tell us a little bit more about how you got there and, a little bit more about everything.
Well, this is a very long story. So I'll start. I actually grew up on the East Coast in upstate New York. And I was the youngest of 5 children.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out early in life that I had a talent for running.
Okay.
And I did very well in high school. I was state champion in the mile in New York State. I won't say what year, but it was a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
It got me actually a full scholarship to the University of Notre Dame to run track.
Wow. And that is obviously a very prestigious school. So as you said, you did have a talent.
Yes, so it was so much fun, and I spent 5 years there. Got my mechanical engineering degree, and I made All-American twice.
Wow!
In the mile and in the 4x800 meter relay. And then I wanted to continue my running, so I decided, how could I do that? And I found a recruiter for the United States Air Force, and he said, you can run for the Air Force track team and you can get your master's in administration. I said, I'm in. So what I didn't realize was he was going to put me into missile launch operations. And the base I got stationed to was Grand Forks, North Dakota, where training for track and field just did not work out. But
no, it's a rather limited time that you can be out and about running.
Yes. So, but the good news was I spent 8 years in the Air Force in Grand Forks, and I met my lovely bride, who is a Grand Forks native. We decided to stay in the state. So I got out of the Air Force and I started to work for a engineering firm in Grand Forks. For 1 year. And then in 1997, I was hired by EAPC, Architects Engineers, and became on the partner track. I was a 2-year associate, and then I became one of the owners and partners in 2000. I've been one of the owners since 2000, so 23 years of that. But I actually, the president at the time, he decided that we should start an office in Fargo, North Dakota. So the current president and I decided to move our families from Grand Forks to Fargo. At the time, EAPC only had one office and 40 people. So we started that office in 2000. Then we were hoping that was going to be our final destination, but my wife actually got appointed by then Governor John Hoeven, who's now the senator from Dakota, and we moved to Bismarck only after a year in Fargo. So
Bismarck, Fargo, Bismarck, Fargo.
So, but we absolutely love Bismarck. The topography is so much nicer in kind of the western part of North Dakota with the Missouri River flowing through. But we grew this office in Bismarck, and then we started these other offices. So our main offices now, in terms of larger populations, obviously, is a St. Paul office and our Phoenix office, which we opened 5 years ago. And I was instrumental in starting both of those offices and love the people down there. So that's kind of how I got to this point. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm assuming the firm does commercial, but does it do commercial and residential, or primarily just commercial?
We do primarily commercial. The residential stuff that we do is more on the multifamily housing, apartments. But for the most part, we are a commercial architectural and engineering firm. We do both architecture and all the engineering disciplines.
Right. It's interesting because, as I said, I don't often talk to people at large firms, but one of the things, and we were talking about this before the program started, how many employees do you have?
We have 185 employees company-wide currently. So
Okay. So pretty good size. I looked at your website. You've got some great projects and things that you have worked on. So, I mentioned in the bio that you're in charge of business development. Tell us more about that, because as I said, what happens with a big business also works for small business. So how do you go about business development?
So business development, I actually had done an internal seminar for our young professionals on our staff to talk about business development. And really, the first thing I do is I like to kind of immerse myself in the market that we're going after. So I'll give you an example for Phoenix. We decided we wanted to start an office down there because they have a really robust healthcare systems down there, so many healthcare systems. And that's one of our strongest sectors. Probably 60% of our work is healthcare, hospitals, clinics, replacements. So you get to know the players. There are certain insertion points in the market. So we get to know the general contractors that build the hospitals and clinics, and they introduce us to the facilities and the leadership of all the different healthcare organizations. We talk to equipment suppliers, other consultants. So we really try to understand the players and the projects and really get to know the area. So once we have that, we really then start setting up those meetings with the players, the facilities managers, the C-suite of these hospitals that we work with, and then we basically find out, what the procedure is for hiring architects. Some have preferred architect lists that you have to get on, so you go through the process of sending them your qualifications and maybe even an interview, and then they decide, okay, yeah, we want you to, start working on some of our $5 million and under projects, or maybe they like you well enough and you're big enough to handle larger projects. So once you get on their lists, then it's really you respond to requests for proposals, and if your proposal is accepted, then you might get a lab remodel or a new clinic. So that's sort of the process in kind of a brief.
I always ask my guests and their staff for things you want to make sure you talk about. And one of the things that came up with you was long-term client relationships. And that piqued my interest because my assumption was you're kind of a one and done. type of thing. You build the building, then you go on to do something else. So, talk to us about long-term client relationships.
So in healthcare, especially, I don't know if you've ever visited a hospital, there's almost always a construction project going
Right.
on.
They're always doing something
Right.
that's,
They're always doing something because they have to compete with each other, and they want the best, newest equipment. So really, once we establish a client, we really we're there for the long haul. Whatever projects come down the pike, and they certainly work with other architects too, but you want to be one of their go-to people. So we really work hard in trying to do a great job satisfying our clients. And I found one of the most important things that we can do is just communicate with them. A lot of times you'll have a client that, maybe they'll send an email or they'll call you and leave a voicemail. There are some firms that maybe they don't respond soon or they don't call back. And that's irritating to a client.
Well, especially when they're spending the amount of money that someone would be spending with an architectural firm.
So what I try to get across to my young project managers is I don't care if you don't have an answer to their question, you need to respond immediately just to say, I got your message. We're looking into it. We'll get back to you at such and such a time. So even if sometimes maybe your performance, maybe you make some errors, but if you're communicating with that client right away, they sometimes they might overlook some of those things because they feel like they're being taken care of. They're being listened to, or being heard, I should say. Yeah.
And it's so funny, as you said, when even when you make mistakes, and to me, that's when you absolutely should be communicating to them to say, I'm sorry, this happened. Here's how we're going to fix it. Right. You're not pointing fingers. You're not saying, well, you didn't respond to my emails. And, it's just, okay, here's, and I discovered that many years ago, you probably when you were in track, right? When I worked for a company, we designed computer software, but it primarily men. And there was one other woman there and then myself. And she was big on tattling on me. And it was like, really, now I was young, I was in my 20s, but I had learned very early on that if I made a mistake, I fessed up to it. And so, whenever something happened, and let's be honest, not to brag, but I didn't make too many mistakes. So it wasn't too bad, but I immediately went to the president or, whoever I needed to and said, this happened. Here's what I have done to fix it. And so the funny thing was, then by the time she tattled, it already had been taken care of, and all it did was make her look bad. But it is one of those things where he respected me because I immediately said, here is what has happened. And again, I didn't point fingers. I didn't say so and so didn't get me the information or whatever. It was just, here is what happened, and here are the steps I have taken to fix it. Because those were small projects. You're working on something pretty good size, right? Where sometimes a mistake can have lots of zeros after it. And so you want to make sure that they know that hopefully it's never going to happen again. I mean, that's the big part. And, but it really is that, step up, take responsibility, don't point fingers. And that leads to better relationships.
Yeah. Well, and even before you get to that point, when I always harp on our project managers to say, first, you need to educate your client. You need to tell them the ramifications of certain things. Like when we have certain design processes where we have a schematic design, which is very rudimentary. Then we go to design development and put together the actual design. So we need to communicate with that client to say, look, our goal is to have a set floor plan at this stage and no changes after that.
Right.
But if there are changes, these are the ramifications.
Right.
It might cost a little more.
Timeline,
It might take a little longer. So if you educate them up front to know these are the kinds of things that will happen during the process, and some of them are more savvy than others. Obviously, some of these people have done, hundreds of projects, but others maybe not. But if you educate them up front as to what the expectations are, what they can expect, then there's no surprises. And no one likes surprises unless it's a birthday. But
Right.
so we really try to educate the client and then just communicate. That's the secret sauce.
Right. And I've also discovered that for important things, you communicate in writing. And because it is easy for mistakes to happen. And I tell people there are reasons why we have contracts, even if it's a small thing. And that contract needs to explain for X number of dollars, we do A, B, and C. And if you want D, E, and F, that will cost you this, or the timeline expands by this, or whatever it is. Because I've always discovered, and, since the beginning of my career, now I'm in marketing, but we always had clients and things that we called scope creep, where, it was, oh, we saw this. Thing. Yes, we saw this. It looks cool. Can't we have it too? Well, yes, you can. However, and sometimes you have to tell them it just won't work. I mean, and especially I'm assuming with architecture, if they say, hey, we want you're like, no, the building cannot have a 9-hole golf course on top of it. It's just not going to happen. Right. But your clients are always looking at their competitors and other things. And so that's where that scope creep comes in, is they're like, ooh, I just saw XYZ.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's interesting you bring that up, because that is a major issue is scope creep in our business, because, people, a lot of times you'll have a building committee, multiple people, 8, 10 people, and they all have kind of their wish list, their want list, their needs list.
Right.
What we tell them is what you need. That's number one.
Yes.
What you want and what you hope for or wish you had. Those are those extras that if you have enough money, certainly, but you need to take care of the things you need first. And so, guarding against scope creep is one of the biggest challenges, because, you don't want to say no. I mean, we have to be tactful about it. It's like going, well, the budget is this, and if we do that, you need to come up with some more money, and we're going to have a bigger building.
Right.
So you just have to, you be honest with them, but, try to be tactful.
Well, and I'm one of those people that watches a lot of HGTV, right? And so one of the things that they frequently do is somebody will say, we want this, and they'll say, okay, but that means you don't get that.
Right.
And so those conversations are important to have also, to say, okay, you decided you wanted a 5-story atrium. We were going to do a 3-story building. So what are we going to do here? What are we going to communicate?
Right.
And I would imagine you do have a lot of that. And then the other thing is, these are not short-term projects. So you probably have to deal with staff turnover. You start with one person, one group of people, and through matriculation, you end up with totally different people at the end who have their own wants, needs. And that's where, having things in writing says, no, your predecessor agreed to the 3-story building, not the 5-story atrium.
Yeah. And I tell you what, that is so true about the length of projects. I can remember one of our largest projects, it wasn't in the healthcare sector, but it was in our industrial sector. And we did the HVAC systems for a coal-fired power plant, brand new power plant in Gillette, Wyoming. And you can imagine a $2 billion power plant, how long that took to.
In literally the middle of nowhere.
Right. And so we started design on that. Gosh, I don't want to get the dates wrong, but I remember one of my guys, he said, Jim, I feel like I've been, the name of the station was Dry Fork. He said, I feel like I've been dry forking it for 6 years. And it was true. And the nice thing about our firm is, though, you talk about turnover, we really have had very loyal employees. Our turnover rate is probably some of the lowest in the industry. We just have a really good HR, but you're absolutely right about the time frame a project takes from start to finish, and that's what I love about it. It's like you look at a bare piece of ground, and then 5 years later, you see this beautiful building, the landscaping, and it's just it's very rewarding to
Mm-hmm.
drive around and say, EAPC
We did
architect.
that. We did that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Right. And I was looking on your website, and I was very impressed with it, and especially because the firm has been around for 50 years, something like that.
we started in 1967 in Grand
Okay.
Forks, Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously things have changed, and with all sorts of things, technology, materials. We've now gone to a lot of solar, a lot of other things. And one of the things that you focus on your website is sustainability, which I think is something that so many people are now interested in.
Mhm.
So talk to us a little bit more about sustainability.
So it's been around a while,
Mm-hmm.
sustainability, but it kind of ebbs and flows really with the cost of energy.
Right.
And that's really when we talk about sustainability, it's a couple of things. It's about energy efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
It's about building materials and um, using things, maybe recyclables
Mm-hmm.
or things like that, and just being cognizant of the environment.
Mm-hmm.
But for instance, we do a lot of work for Indian Health Services, and they have very strict
Right.
guidelines in
Mm-hmm.
terms of being what's called LEED certified, and
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yes. Mm-hmm.
basically a building that is you're just using just
Mm-hmm.
recyclable materials. You're using energy
Mm-hmm.
efficient systems, whether it's your mechanical
Mm-hmm.
systems or your building envelope with windows, walls, roof,
Mm-hmm.
just trying to make sure um, they're just energy efficient.
Right.
So really, that's our goal, is to give our clients the most energy efficient
Mm-hmm.
building we can, because they're spending money on a monthly basis
Mm-hmm.
on their utilities.
Mm-hmm.
So what better way to kind of control those costs is to
Mm-hmm.
design your building just airtight and just using just the most efficient
Mm-hmm.
mechanical systems you can.
Right.
So
And when we go in buildings and see the LEED certification symbol, we know, hey, this is a building that people really took the time to think about.
mhm.
And clearly you can't always do some of the things, again, the wish list and the want list. Somebody might say, hey, we want solar. Well, do you live somewhere where solar is where you have enough sunshine? I mean, I'm from Denver.
Mhm.
Solar works really well in Denver because there's so many sunny days there.
Yeah.
I'm going to Seattle in a couple weeks. Solar's not as big there.
Right.
Or there's obviously different ways where you can do things like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I love that people are really looking at that. And then and also knowing it might be a bigger initial upfront cost, but it will pay out over a longer period of time.
Right. Exactly.
So what are some other, I'm just interested, since you've been with the firm since 97, what are some of the other trends that you have seen that have really come about?
Well, so it's interesting because we actually we have five sectors
Mm-hmm.
at EAPC. We have healthcare, as I mentioned, it's our
Okay.
most robust, and we've actually been doing healthcare since the beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
firm. Our first client in Grand Forks, North Dakota, was then United Hospital. Now it's All True Hospital, but
Okay.
that was our first client, and we
Mm-hmm.
were just an engineering firm back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so we added architects, I think, 3 years after that, and became
Mm-hmm.
a full service architectural engineering firm. So healthcare is a big sector of ours. Um, Higher education, we do a lot of work
Mm-hmm.
for the higher education institutions around the region. K through 12
Mm-hmm.
education, other big one. And we also, as I mentioned, we have the industrial sector where we
Mm-hmm.
do power plant
Mm-hmm.
work, food processing. And then we also have a civic group, which
Mm.
does fire stations, police
Okay.
stations,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So in terms of trends, I feel like they're really prevalent in healthcare. The new trends in terms of just the equipment that they
Mm-hmm.
have, the
Right.
MRIs, the CT
Mm-hmm.
scans, linear accelerators. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, everything is it's like almost ever changing. So you're trying to keep up with the Joneses in terms of so we do a ton of equipment replacements. And also trends on with COVID, that changed a lot of things.
I bet.
There's a lot of telemedicine now. Um, they really they're trying to open up spaces more so people aren't necessarily congregated.
Right.
And they're really doing a nice job of remote work, remote medicine, things like that. So there's a lot of things we have to take into consideration there, and really it's helped our firm. The trend of like the Zoom meetings. Our favorite platform is Teams. So we have. It was funny because right before COVID started, we had a strategic planner that said you really need to start using Teams, and we were kind of
sluggish. No, we just get together when we need to, right?
But then it was like a light switch when COVID hit. Everybody just started using Teams, and now we are exclusively. We do, because we're in so many different offices. We collaborate. So we use Teams on a daily basis. Mondays I have, I think, 6 Teams meetings that are just scheduled every Monday. And it really has helped us in other geographic areas because maybe we've got our expert on MRIs is in our St. Paul office, but we've got a project in Phoenix.
Okay.
We don't always have to be there as long as we have people there that can do, sort of called site work. If the expertise is in St. Paul, then we can do
and
that
reachable just like that,
without the expense of the travel. So that's probably the biggest trend we've seen is the things that have come from COVID and just have to deal with those sorts of things. So.
Right. Well, speaking of COVID, when we were in the throes of it, and did you guys do a lot of work in, I don't want to call it retrofitting, and I know you're an architectural firm, but you are engineering also, in going back and like I was it was a brewery that we were in over the weekend, and they had this gigantic sign that talked about how often the air was scrubbed, and I'm thinking it's a brewery, but but companies did do that. They really changed their air filtration systems, all sorts of things. Did you find that was something that at least for a little period of time you guys ended up doing?
It was huge. There was 2 sectors really that it affected the most. Our education sector, like our K through 12. We were going to all the schools that we've worked with in the area and others, and we were actually putting on seminars about how they can put up, even plexiglass and how their air systems, as you mentioned, filtration or ionization. Just increasing the air exchange. So we actually we put on seminars of these facilities could do it. If they wanted us to do it, we could come in and do it. And healthcare, same thing. The filtration is even bigger deal in health, obviously. But also just setting up, turning in maybe a section of the hospital into a COVID unit. So there are certain things you need to do to isolate those patients. And
you couldn't have just the big room triage. They had to be isolated.
Right. So, and then the air pressurization is the big thing there. So those 2 sectors, we really had to make some modifications. And honestly, that kept us afloat during that.
Because the building stopped. I mean, to some degree. I mean, clearly, if it was something that was critical, then it continued. But if it's, say, you mentioned that you did apartment buildings, well, they probably stopped working on those for a while.
Yeah, so we did a lot of things, and actually the government was very helpful in terms of the PPP loans that were out there. So
because you were critical, I'm assuming, for many of the things that you do.
Right. So it was pretty crazy, but we got through it. And as I say, we're as large as we've been. 185 is the largest since I've been with the organization. So we've really we came through it strong. It's a little there's a little bit of a downturn right now, but
Mhm.
hopefully, things will smooth out. But
Right.
yeah, it's been good.
Right. Well, and the industries that you're in have survived a lot of the things. Commercial real estate is just, I don't know what's going on with it. I don't think they know what's going on with it.
Mhm.
Office space, just general office space is like my husband works for a company. They own their own building. It's a fairly large, substantial building with multiple floors, empty because everybody is home.
Mhm.
And they have said, you're staying home. This is working fine. We're not going to do this. And so they've had the building up for sale. They don't even get anybody that comes and looks,
Yeah.
because they don't need that. So that type of building, those buildings it seems like it has declined. Obviously healthcare, they know, we always need that. And as you said, those are changing. But yeah, but just general office space, that's an interesting market to be in right now.
Yeah, and in fact, we were glad that that's not a heavy sector
Mhm.
for us,
Right.
because there were firms that were. I remember at the very beginning of COVID, some of those firms that specialized in that
Mhm.
cut staff in half that
Right.
first, because it was
Mhm.
like no one's doing anything.
Mhm.
But
Right.
so we were fortunate in that the sectors that we work in,
Mhm.
they still had to,
Mhm.
still had to do stuff.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. But just between education and healthcare. I mean, that's, now education has changed a bit
mhm.
because of online and things like that. I'm a member of the Dean's Advisory Board for the University of Colorado for the College of Arts and Sciences, which is the biggest college, there. And we were talking about the fact that, more students really want to do online learning, but
Mhm.
they still have to have a place to go to. And there's clearly some things, I mean, say chemistry. You're not going to have that stuff at home, and so well, you shouldn't anyway. But more important, things like the liberal arts, music, band, choir, theater, you still have to have those physical places, and so again, the air filtration, that's where those things come in to make it healthy for people to be there, which of course then just makes it healthy in general. If we're cutting down on flu cases, on all those other things, that's a good thing.
Yeah, very true.
So what are some other post-COVID trends that you have seen?
Oh gosh.
That's a left field question. See, I didn't tell you in the pre-chat, there are times where I go squirrel.
Um, well, an unfortunate trend is, we actually, as I mentioned, we have seen sort of a slowdown.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the
Yeah, for a
reason,
variety of reasons,
right, so
Mm-hmm.
COVID has created sort of the supply chain issue is
Mm-hmm.
the biggest.
Oh yes.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's owners that maybe they want to do something,
Mm-hmm.
but they can't
You
because
can't get the material to them,
of
or you
materials.
can't even
And
get the
then,
material, period. Mm-hmm.
right. And then we've seen just an astronomical
Mm-hmm.
increase in building costs.
Mm-hmm.
We used to figure, I'll just throw out some numbers, like $250 a square foot for, healthcare. Now there are projects coming in at like $1,000 a square. I mean,
Wow.
it's crazy. And so
Mm-hmm.
in that situation, the owners are like going, God bless it. We
Mm-hmm.
can't,
We
we
can't
can't
do
afford
this.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we've seen projects get put on hold,
Mm-hmm.
or we're going to rebid it when we think the
Mm-hmm.
environment is going to be cheaper. So that's an
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate trend, is that, and it seems to us that now it's gotten to a point where, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the prices responded very quickly on the upside. When
Mm-hmm.
things got the
Right.
supply chain
Mm-hmm.
got crazy, the prices went up. But
Mm-hmm.
now it's sort of kind of
Mm-hmm.
coming down, but we feel like it should be coming down
Mm-hmm.
faster than it
Right.
is. People are making money,
Mm-hmm.
and but at some point, if the projects get shut down, no
Right.
one's
Mm-hmm.
doing well. So that's an unfortunate trend. Is I feel like we still haven't gotten back. We're
Mm-hmm.
not even close to getting back to prices, pre-COVID
Mm-hmm.
prices.
Right.
So
Yeah, the materials and obviously for a while it was just you couldn't get them places. I mean, you might have them. We all saw pictures of, say, the ports where all the materials were there. They were either still on the ships or they were, on land, but you couldn't get anybody there to get them out, whether it was, truck or train. And all of those various things. It just, it probably was made, more complicated in the fact that in many cases, stuff like that, you're dealing with multiple states, which had multiple things that, multiple shutdowns. I mean, here in Georgia, we opened things back up here really pretty fast. I mean, in May of 2020, they said you can go back to meeting in person, and, clearly there's always lots and lots of truck traffic that goes through here. They loved it when COVID was shut down because those trucks loved that there was nobody on the roads.
No traffic.
But, but yeah, I mean, it was so strange to see how, everything kind of shifted around after that. And I think people are still, like you said, they're still trying to figure it out. They were, especially if they were getting ready to build something and then boom, COVID happened. And I mean, that was so weird because you went to work on Friday and Monday you were home, and you were home for who knows how long. I mean, that was the other thing, was nobody knew just how long it was going to last. But yeah, so those projects stopped, were put on hold. Obviously, most companies had financial issues, which then slowed a lot of things down. But it's been interesting to see stuff going back up now. When we drive around here in Atlanta, it's like there wasn't a building there before. There's a new building there. And because when things started ramping back up, they did seem to ramp up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing, speaking of squirrels, I'm going back to what we talked about, sort of like long-term clients, but we also talked about employees being loyal,
right?
Keeping that turnover down. That was a big thing during COVID, is that we kept our employees employed, and I think they appreciated that. And so we've had quite a bit of loyalty. So one of my I'm very passionate about team building and about our employees. I feel like they're family. So we really try to make a working environment now, especially after COVID. We do a lot of remote work, so people have the flexibility to work from home, and I think they really appreciate that. So like I said, I'm really passionate about team building and our employees. And what we try to do is I really try to get to know these people. It's like you kind of ask those questions of, what's going on in your life? Everyone's got something going on that, might be affecting their work, or, they've got a lot on their plate. I'm fascinated by people and what makes them tick. Give an example of a young man in one of our offices who, he came on some hard times. His car was repossessed, and he and his girlfriend had a baby, and he was taking the bus to work every day. It took him an hour, and then an hour and a half going home. I mean,
that's rough.
Yeah, when you think about the things you have in your life that you worry about, it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to worry about. There's a lot of people that have a lot going on in their life, a lot on their plate. So I feel like if you understand your people and even your clients, you learn about them, you can more effectively communicate with them and be there for them, whether it's, like I said, whether it's an employee or a client. It's just I love the people that we have at EAPC. It's a great place to work, and we really have that family sort of environment, and that's one of our core values. It's just like a collaboration and family. So
right. What are some other secrets that you have for team building?
So I'll go back to just understanding the people you have.
Okay.
So there are certain personalities, and our HR guy is fantastic. We actually have an HR department, 2 people, and they put together these tests of what your personality traits are and who works well with whom. And so if you understand people, you can sometimes you can put people in positions where they're going to succeed. That's the key of team building. It's like, okay, you have to understand what this person's good at. If he's a great or she's a great designer, but not necessarily organized, well, you're not going to put them into a project management position. You're
right
on the front end where they're designing the building. And then if you have maybe an introvert versus an
Mm-hmm.
extrovert. You're not going to put the introvert out in an environment where he or she's doing business development or in an interview.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to put them in a situation where they're comfortable. Maybe they're comfortable just being in their
Mm-hmm.
cubicle, just grinding out
Mm-hmm.
the construction documents. But you've got someone that's more extroverted, like you and me, for
Mm-hmm.
instance.
Oh no, we're shy. We're shy
Where
people.
you put us out in front.
Mm-hmm.
You're the ones that are going knocking on the doors,
Mm-hmm.
talking to clients, running meetings. So I think team building is about understanding
Mm-hmm.
people and putting them in positions where they'll succeed. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really the secret sauce of, I think, in terms of what I do for
Mm-hmm.
team building. And it's interesting because um, my HR guy, he likes to put me in a situation where I'm helping in the hiring process
Ah.
in some of the offices.
Mm-hmm.
At least three of the offices, he's always he's like, Jim, I'd like you to be involved in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems like, I don't know, it's, I make people feel good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm friendly. I try to be funny. And he just calls me the closer. So
Ah.
whenever
Mm-hmm.
Jim is involved in trying to hire
Mm-hmm.
someone, I call him the closer because we almost always get the person
Mm-hmm.
on board. So anyway, I just feel
Mm-hmm.
like I said, understanding people and just treating them the way you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm. I love
That's
that.
so.
And it's interesting as you've been talking, and I read your bio at the start. You need to add a word to it.
What's that?
Mentor.
Yeah.
And I really do think, because you've several times you have mentioned working with the young professionals, all of these things. So, okay, so if we add the word mentor to your description, what do you see, and because I think you are a mentor, you've talked about all of that, why do you think it's so important to help the young professionals as they're coming up?
Well, because you want them to grow, you want them to
Mm-hmm.
succeed. I look at, some of my own partners that are maybe similar age or a
Mm-hmm.
little younger. There are some times where maybe they're doing something that you're thinking, you know, I I think I could help here because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think they're necessarily going about it the way
Mm-hmm.
they should. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to make them a better manager of
Right.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with, actually my son works for us. He's an architect down in our
Mm-hmm.
St. Paul office, mentoring him, trying to not be the helicopter parent or
Mm-hmm.
the snowplow parent, pulling,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but giving him helpful hints as to, you really
Mm-hmm.
should talk to this person if you want to learn more about this, or
Mm-hmm.
if you're not as busy as you want, you need to talk to this person
Mm-hmm.
and this person in this office. So it's kind of looking around and seeing what a person needs. And a lot of times they'll come to you. I
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of employees that will just ask me questions and, just want to get my opinion on something. We have office managers in all of our 10 offices.
Mm-hmm.
I probably talk to, four or five of those office managers, on a daily basis because there's a lot going on
Mm-hmm.
when you're managing an office of, let's say, some of our offices have 20, some
Mm-hmm.
have 50, depending. So there's a lot going on. So you can kind of mentor them as well, just
Mm-hmm.
how to get through their day,
I
so.
love it. So, now this is purely anecdotal.
Mhm.
I think we need more women in this area. So, how do we make that happen? I mean, obviously STEM programs, things like that are, they're building them more and more, but how do we get more women and, diversity just in general in architecture and other, other industries like that?
Well, I think it's happening organically now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it takes a while to catch up. I
Mm-hmm.
remember back when I was at Notre Dame back in the 80s, Notre Dame had just become um it had become both men and women. It's
Right.
like
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was an all male
it was an all
school.
male
Mm-hmm.
school. And so, but you could see it over the years. Now
Mm-hmm.
I'm involved with the alumni
Mm-hmm.
clubs and still connected to the university. And the women engineers now there's equal number
Mm-hmm.
of men and women in the engineering field. So, and architecture is going that way as well. So I think it's happening organically. We're getting more candidates
Right.
that are female. And honestly, in terms of diversity, we're at a disadvantage in North Dakota. Some of our
It's just not as diverse as other areas. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, but what I've loved about Phoenix is we have a very diverse staff down there of 22 people. And it's interesting because I've asked some of the folks down there, a lot of them there's probably 4 in the office at least that speak Spanish. And then some others that are of Indian descent.
Right. Oh yeah. Being in Phoenix, you would definitely have Native Americans.
Well, no, this is actually India.
Oh, in India.
Yes. So I've been asking them to teach me certain things about their language. So I've been learning a little bit of Spanish. And so I think it's happening organically for us, both in the fact that in the fields that we're involved in, there's more women that are getting into those fields. And also just by the fact that our geographies are now getting to larger metropolitan areas. Even St. Paul is much more diverse than Bismarck, let's say. But Phoenix is another level of diversity. And we absolutely love those two offices. I love spending time there. I spend a week, a month in each of those offices.
Oh my.
And I'm trying to get my wife to spend more time in Phoenix during the winter.
I was going to say, just keep telling her it's warmer, dear. It's warmer. Yes. And then in the summer, you say because I can say this because I'm in Atlanta. It's a dry heat.
Exactly. So yeah, we just, I feel like, and the number of women we've hired recently has really ratcheted up. I mean, I think probably the last 5 hires we've done this year, I think 4 have been women, and 3 of those women have been architects. So,
nice.
Yeah. So we're very happy. So
well, and when I've talked to other people, they one of the things they have said is remote working has increased that also, because you don't have to physically be in Bismarck or wherever, and it's just and I think that is obviously a trend. It started before. I mean, I remember 3 or 4 years before COVID hit, I interviewed a gentleman who he called himself a digital nomad. He had the RV. He was young because he had young kids, as in not school age kids. And he said, he they hook up the trailer and away they go. They see it partially, or saw it then, as a way to really explore places with their kids. And I'm thinking, but they're 3, they don't remember. And he said, at some point they were going to have to settle down because there were things that a physical school would offer as opposed to virtual learning and things like that. But so we've had the digital, the remote, but obviously with COVID, we all went, oh, hey, this works pretty well. There are times obviously where you have to be in a physical location. And I think sometimes it does foster more creativity. I mean, how many times, has it been when you were standing there getting coffee that you came up with a good idea? And so now you just kind of have to think about it more. Like you said, Teams, you can, pop on, real quick with somebody, all these various things, like we all have to be what we call Zoom ready, right? At any point in time, somebody's going to say, hey, we need to Zoom with you right now. So, yeah. But I think that is one of the good things that came out of COVID was we did figure out we don't all have to be in the same place at the same time.
That's absolutely right. So, and it's interesting, we were talking about, working from home, and what I found is we actually have some staff that have, young children.
Right.
And, and some of the guys, it's not always the women. In fact, a lot of times it's the male employees that are dealing with the kids at home. So I've got to work remote today because I've got a sick kid.
Right.
And it's actually worked really well. And I think in terms of retention of employees, that's a huge deal when someone's got that kind of flexibility. You don't have somebody going, get in here and
or I don't have any vacation time left. I don't know what to do because I have a sick child. Things like that.
Yeah. So I think that's been kind of an interesting thing where you've just got people working from home because, daycare's
Hmm.
not taking kids that are
Right.
sick or whatever. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's we like I said, we love our employees and they're like family to
Hmm.
us. So
Right.
yeah.
It is one of the bigger challenges that a lot of people talk to me about when we went remote was that kind of the lack of the personal touch.
Hmm.
You didn't always, we can, when you see somebody in the hall at their desk, wherever, you might pick up on there might be something going on here,
Yeah.
and it's much more difficult when you only see them in this little box, right?
Right.
Because they can hide a lot of stuff in the little box. And so that was one of the things that leaders were challenged with was still figuring out, and especially when mental health started being kind of an issue with people who just, I got to get out of this house. I cannot stand this anymore. And so I think that was one of the challenges, but now we've worked through that, especially when people can go into office, not go into office, go to meetings. I mean, we're almost back to normal. But did you find that was a challenge when everybody, all of a sudden was home?
You know, I didn't, and it's partly because I kind of like to dig in
Right.
to
Mm-hmm.
hang out with people. So in my case, I felt like I was still able
Mm-hmm.
to do that with people.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found interesting is that very soon when we started to loosen things up
Mm-hmm.
and we said we could have X number of people in the
Mm-hmm.
office, people were wanting to come back. And like
Right.
we
Oh yeah,
did
we
a
are social animals,
yeah,
even
we
the
did a survey
introverts. Mm-hmm.
and we did the surveys and
Mm-hmm.
we were surprised at some of the
Mm-hmm.
responses where people were like going, would you work remote 100% of the time? And almost no one said that.
Mm-hmm.
They were like going, no,
Right.
I like getting into the
Mm-hmm.
office and just, socializing and just
Mm-hmm.
having that
Mm-hmm.
connection with
Right.
people. So I think in our case, we just we came back soon and
Mm-hmm.
people wanted to.
Right.
But like I said, I dig in. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of like to know what makes
Mm-hmm.
people tick. So
Mm-hmm.
if
I
I
love
even
it. Yeah.
I sense a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
something going on.
Yeah. Are
So
they a little more unkempt, or,
right,
are they perpetually late, and they never were?
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I talked to a woman, I interviewed her on the program, who is an introvert and a very large introvert. She said she'd get in her little box and never come back out if she could. But she said being an introvert, it was actually more of a challenge because it got easier and easier to not go out and not see people. She said, that really for a lot of introverts was, because us little social critters, we found ways to get out, right? We're at the end of a cul-de-sac. So every Saturday, everybody had, we all came out and at the end of our driveways and would have dinners and all sorts of things. But for the introvert, it got easier and easier to just totally get themselves out of the population.
Right.
So yeah, she said it was, she said for many of them, they were one of the first ones back in to the offices or going to meetings. They were like, I got to see people again. Even if I just go stand in the corner, I got to go see people again.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, oh my gosh, Jim, this really has been very interesting. I don't think I've ever interviewed an architect before. This is fabulous. But you've had such great tips, especially on team building, on mentoring, all of those things. As I said at the very start, what works for big business works for small business too. And and it's not just business. I mean, volunteer organizations, all of those things, we all have the same dynamics. But we're down to just 5 minutes. Oh my gosh. So tell us a little bit more about EAPC. And, we've talked about the services that they provide, but then if somebody wants to reach out to you, how would they do that?
Well, the easiest way, obviously, is email, jim.tyler@eapc.net.
Oh,
That's kind of the best way. Not
mm-hmm.
.com. People make that mistake. It's .net. Or our website, as you said, you've
Mm-hmm.
been on www.eapc.net.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way to get a hold of me. But in terms of a little bit more about EAPC, as I mentioned, we have 10 offices. We
Mm-hmm.
have offices in Bemidji and St. Paul, Minnesota. We have a Sioux Falls office.
Mm-hmm.
All 6 major cities in North Dakota we cover: Grand Forks, Fargo, Minot, Bismarck,
Mm-hmm.
Williston, and Dickinson. and then our office in Phoenix. And did I say Sioux Falls, South Dakota?
I think so, but that's all right. We can say it twice because it's twice as nice, right?
Right. And so, those fastest growing offices are the big metro areas like Phoenix and St. Paul. And a plug for our healthcare, our 5 sectors. Healthcare is what we specialize in. Also K-12 education, higher education, and industrial. So we're 185 people strong. And we talk about team building. We went from, as I mentioned early on, when I was first starting with the firm, we had 40 people in one office, and we built a team of 185 in 10 offices in that many years. So very proud of that, and we're just thrilled. We have a great family. So
very cool. And I'm looking on your website. You have a variety of different job opportunities, so if someone is in that field, take a look. There's and wants to, it's okay. North Dakota is a good place. And like you said, remote work is something that, we can do more and more of.
We have, there's probably 15 at least different career fields that we offer. We've got electrical engineers, we've got mechanical engineers, structural engineers, architects, interior designers, drafters. We've got a HR department. We have marketing department. We've got
obviously you have support staff.
Content writer. We have a videographer, photographer, proposal writers. We have a great CFO and his accounting team. So we really cover quite a range of job opportunities. So great place to work, great benefits. So,
well, and obviously it's a good place since you've been there since 97. Yes.
Like I said, I love this place. They'll probably have to drag me out of here because I think our bylaws say that as a partner, I have to sell my stock at 67, which is 7 years from now. Wait, I just told my age. I'm 60. But like I said, I would like to work longer than that because I just love it. So
I love it. And again, it's EAPC.net.
Correct.
Perfect. I love it. Well, Jim, this really has been fascinating. And, I've learned, which always, I hope that means the people who are listening or watching are learning also. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Actually, I have a joke. So I was at this wonderful fundraiser this past weekend. One of my partners has a Down syndrome girl who's 4, and we went to a Special Olympics fundraiser, just absolutely terrific. And one of the MCs was a high functioning autistic boy, and his job was to tell jokes when there was some downtime. And one of his jokes that he said, and he did it quite well, he just stood up and he said, "What do you call a typo on a headstone?" And he paused, and then he said, "A grave mistake." And the crowd just erupted. It was just, it was a very special night. So anyway.
Oh my gosh, I love it. It's always fun to end with, shall we call him a dad joke?
Yes.
I love it. Well, Jim, I have been having such a great time talking with you. I've been speaking with Jim Tyler of EAPC Architects Engineers. I'm Deb Creer. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.